how has volunteering contributed to the development of your leadership skills? And maybe you can talk about some of the specific skill areas.
Learn how to adapt quickly, and that's how I gain experience and learn how to delegate properly.
So in my case, it was communication, adaptability. So I had to adapt. And the second point for me was new and a discovery.
When we think about personal and professional growth, we often think about education, certifications, and work experience. But one crucial element that's often overlooked is volunteering in project organizations. Volunteering is more than just giving back to the community. It's an incredible opportunity to develop your leadership skills, gain practical experience, and build confidence in your own abilities. In today's episode, I will be joined by Yasmina Khelifi, PMP, and Mayte Mata, also a PMP. Together, they've authored the book, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership. And today, they're going to talk about the unique benefits of engaging with volunteer projects and how these experiences can truly enhance your leadership skills. From improving communication and teamwork to fostering empathy and decision-making abilities, volunteering offers invaluable lessons that traditional leadership roles may not provide. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Leadership Show. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. I have with me Yasmina Khelifi and Mayte Mata. They're both authors together. They have project management experience, but they've authored the book, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership. Mayte and Yasmina, welcome to the AEC Leadership Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. A pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you both. So what we're going to do to start off is I want to hear a little bit about yourself and how you kind of transitioned from your technical backgrounds into more leadership roles. And Yasmina, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yes. In fact, I am a telecom engineer and I work in a telecom company. That is what I was hired. And the logical path in the company was to move from engineer to project leadership. But I was not so aware about it at that time until one manager proposed me to become a project manager. So it is by accident that I took a project leadership role.
Interesting. And Mayte, how about you? Tell us about your journey.
So I have a master's degree in chemical engineering. And while I was doing my internship in a water waste treatment plant, I realized that work was not for me. Then I get a call from a top 100 consulting company in the technology world, and they reached me out to be a business analyst. They were looking for engineers, and I didn't know at that point why. So they trained me. I really enjoyed the BA role, and accidentally, as Yasmina, I finished as a project manager, and now I'm a director of a project management office.
Yeah, and I think that's a very typical journey for a lot of engineers, right? They start in engineering, they're not really sure what's going to be next, and then they find out that, one option is to go into management, project management, leadership. And actually, a lot of times in a lot of organizations, if you really want to advance, you kind of have to go on that route, which isn't always necessarily comfortable for technical professionals. So it requires quite a bit of development as you go through the process. So Yasmina, let me start with you. What was kind of one of the main challenges that you faced when you were stepping into a project leadership role early in your career?
Yes, so my first project leadership role was to manage a software project, and I do not have any software development background. So I worked with developers, and my first big obstacle was really imposter syndrome. I thought, okay, why, what I'm doing here exactly? And also I have to say that at that time, I didn't have any community. Like you have a community with your engineering institute, Anthony, I know, and the community around your podcast. But at that time, I didn't have any community, so I also felt quite alone. And it was hard to overcome at the beginning the imposter syndrome. But little by little, I gained some confidence.
That's interesting. So essentially, when you started, you were kind of thinking to yourself that it was a lot of self-doubt, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that does happen to a lot of us as technical professionals because, our language, our comfortable language is the technical stuff, right? Not like the leadership. So it can be very, very difficult. And I think a big part of your organization, like what their process is for helping you transition, can really make a difference with that,
Right.
depending on your company and your organization and if they are helpful with that. So, Mayte, how about you? What was the challenge for you, coming from that chemical engineering background, making that transition into leadership?
So I think that one of the biggest challenges was transitioning for being a doer, a person that execute and do things, to focus on leadership. And the shift was kind of hard because I really need to learn how to guide and empower other people rather than going to a system or executing tasks by myself. So I think that this shift of mindset was one of the biggest challenges that I needed to learn how to do it.
Yeah, and I think that that's the challenge because really we're used to kind of managing ourselves at that point, right? Our own tasks, we're in the details, and now we have to realize that we need to guide and lead and mentor others as part of our new role. And so it feels very unnatural for us, right? We want to come to work and we want to jump right in to our stuff. But if we do that, then there's going to be other people that are maybe not as effective or efficient because we haven't got them going in the right direction before we dove into our stuff. So I think that's something that really we need to think of and reframe our mindset as a leader is first we need to think about the team before we think about ourselves. And that's something that I think takes a little bit of time to do. So I know you're both very interested in volunteering and how volunteering can really be helpful in terms of your leadership journey. So Yasmina, what inspired you to start volunteering in project-oriented organizations?
Well, I have to be honest, it was for personal reasons. At the beginning, I felt I needed other challenges. I love sharing knowledge. I had a lot of ideas and I felt a bit stuck. I felt work was a bit narrow. So I thought, what shall I do? And I remembered that some people mentioned that I could volunteer in the local chapter, local organization. So I thought, why not? So I did it quite late, in fact, Anthony, in my career as project leader, but I never regretted it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, both of you are obviously passionate about this idea of volunteering to develop your leadership skills, hence you writing the book together. And I think that it's a great avenue because, as I said earlier, there are a lot of companies out there that don't do a good job of helping their technical professionals transition into management and leadership. So if it's something that you need to do on your own, I think volunteering in organizations is a great way for you to build some of those skill sets, on your own, right? Because how else would you do it? So if you find an organization where you can volunteer, that's a great way for you to develop and build those skill sets. So Mayte, how about you? How has volunteering contributed to the development of your leadership skills? And maybe you can talk about some of the specific skill areas that you have seen growth in.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, one of my challenges was to change that mindset of doing things to lead people. So one of the areas that I really helped me volunteering was to learn how to delegate because and also the adaptability to that because every situation in a volunteer setting is different. So I needed to learn how to adapt quickly and delegate tasks. I was not able to do all in that volunteer setting. So one example is I volunteer for a TEDx or local organization. Well, I was leading a team and that was my first exposure to have people with me, but I couldn't do all the work. So it was a great place to experiment how to delegate. And that's how I gained experience and learn how to delegate properly in a nice way and not look bossy or that I didn't want to do something that I after can apply to my daily job when I try to delegate tasks to my team.
Yeah, that's great. And I like that because in the volunteering position, maybe there's a little bit less stress or a little bit less pressure for you. And something like delegating, which can be very difficult to do. A lot of technical professionals really struggle with that because, like you said earlier, we're used to being doers and not necessarily giving stuff away. That can be a great atmosphere for you to do that. So that's a good example. Yasmina, do you have any examples of like a skill or something for you in your volunteering journey that was helpful for you?
Yes, I can mention, Mayte mentioned adaptability. So in my case, it was communication adaptability. For example, I love emails. So for me, it is easier, it is clearer. But I notice in the volunteer settings, people, they sometimes receive also a lot of emails, but they have less time and they are unpaid. So some people, they told me, no, call me directly. It's easier for me because I got too many emails from the organization. So I had to adapt. And the second point for me that was new and a discovery was that I could also learn completely new skills. I never thought about it. For example, I presented a webinar. I was part of panel. Also, I moderated panel. So it was completely new skills, and I gained much confidence in doing this kind of things in a volunteering setting.
Yeah, I really like that because I think the one way that you grow and build these skills is you have to practice them, right? You can't just read a book. You can't just watch a video. You can't just go to a course. You need to put them into action. And so I think by volunteering, some of the examples that Yasmina just gave is an opportunity for you to try it and to do it. The same with, the way Mayte was saying with the delegation, you try it and you do it. And that's something that we spend a lot of time on in our training programs is we're going to teach you something today, but then we want you to go practice it on your projects with your teams at home, right? If it's a listening activity, you could do it with your spouse, you could do it with your children, whatever the case may be. But I think building any leadership skills has to be done by leading, by actually leading and getting involved with people and trying things out, because usually you can't just take in information and not practice it if you want to improve that skill set. And that's something that's very important. All right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit, Yasmina. I want to ask you about building and leading diverse teams in international projects. How do you approach that? Why is diversity and inclusion important to you? Take us through some of that.
Yes, correct. So I have been working in international environment from the beginning. In fact, I've been working in the same company, in fact, now for many years. And I worked remotely with virtual teams with people I never meet and probably will never meet, in fact, and sometimes they do not use videos. So how do I do? Well, I try first to get to know them better, to ask some questions when I talk to them. I work, for example, for some years now with a lot of African countries. So I try to ask them questions about their context, or how it is going. When I feel the person doesn't want to answer precisely, well, I stop, of course. But that's a way of doing. I also talk to a lot of internal people who know their context, the countries there. So that is my way of doing, to approach, to get to know people better, to connect with them. Another part also is to try to facilitate. For example, we have meetings and English is usually the language we use, even if we have one native English speakers and all people can speak French. So we have to speak in English. And some of my colleagues sometimes in Africa, they are not self-confident at all. So really, they begin to say, sorry, I cannot speak. Do we have to speak in English? I cannot. And usually I tell them, English is also not my native language. So we are all learning. So just talk. And if there is an issue, we can help to translate or not. So that is the way I do it, also to try to include them and to guide them. So I think Mayte will also complete on this.
Yes, please, Mayte.
Yeah, I agree. And if you realize, she describes diversity and inclusion kind of a journey, because depending on the project or the situation that you are, you focus on learn and include a different type of people or minority in that case. For example, when I was doing my master's degree, we were not a lot of women in the master's degree. So then we focus in elevating our voice and make sure that the people know, hey, we can also be engineers. I'm talking about years and years ago. However, when I moved from Spain to the United States, I realized that I needed to raise Latino voices in my teams, because Latino was the minority working here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I think that each situation is unique, and understanding that diversity is important, because it brings a lot of smart in the team and the teams perform better. I think that it's important to be adaptable and understanding the needs of each team.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I think you get a lot of different perspectives and thoughts from people
Right.
from different cultures, different backgrounds, different experiences. And so I think the more diversity you can build into your team, you're going to just have more experience, right? More perspectives, more solutions you can bring to the table just because someone has a different background than someone else. So I definitely think that that's a very valuable aspect of the engineering world. And I think it's a very important job for a leader to build diversity and inclusion into their teams and into their projects. It's really, really important.
If I can complete, Anthony, what you said, because you say we are in Mayte, what we experience also in Mayte during our project. Well, sometimes because you say we can say, okay, let's build a diverse team, but I think nowadays also in technical projects, you have diverse teams. So I think for me, it's not a choice. You are not going to say, because we work with some people in the United States, in the West or East Coast. We work with people in China, in UK, in Europe, in Africa. So we have diverse teams. So that's why I think it's a very important skill to develop for engineers, for technical people, to know how to lead and to work and collaborate in diverse teams.
Yeah, and while we're talking about diversity, I have a question the both of you are from different countries, different backgrounds. I'm curious as to how the two of you connected and decided to work on your book together since you're from different backgrounds. Would you be able to tell that story real quickly here?
Yeah, Yasmina, you can tell the story.
I think, it's a story of community, I would say, Anthony, as always, in fact, because we are part of the same project management community. So I saw Mayte, she talked with I felt a lot of passion. She wrote an article. I felt a lot of passion when I read it. And I said, okay, I was looking for someone from diverse backgrounds for my podcast. So I interviewed Mayte. And from there, we exchanged and we said, volunteering is not so valued in France and in Spain. And we discovered the power. Why not writing an article? What about making a webinar? And after, we said, why not writing a book? And that's how it began. And what is wonderful, I also tell a lot, we met only last year in October in Atlanta for the first time. So it means we have been working 2 years entirely remotely and producing and delivering webinars, articles, and the book.
Wow, I can't believe you did the book that fast. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, the book was an experience also because both of us agreed that we didn't want to be self-published. We really want to have a publisher. And finally, we pitched to different publishers, and C.R. Asper took the book. And I'm really happy that one of the biggest publishers in the engineering and project management world support this project.
That's awesome. No, it's really, it's exciting to see that. And it's really, it goes with your message from the book, which is you met each other through volunteering, right? Like through an organization that, wasn't your work, right? You were, and you kept with each other. So that's great. That's awesome. So Yasmina, what role has continuous learning played in your career? Because that's something we focus on here at EMI. And how have some of the certifications like the PMP, the PMI-ACP, PMI-PBA, how have they helped you in your leadership development?
It's a great question. So first, to answer continuous learning in terms of career in project leadership as an engineer. So for me, it was a way to learn, to keep up with new things, to improve my skills, and also to meet new people. In fact, for me, really, when I do an online course or classes, I do a lot of online course nowadays more than face-to-face. It is also a way to meet new people. Usually, it is internal the company, so I can meet new colleagues. And it happened, I think, some years ago, I met a colleague, and then we got on very well. And then lately, I had to prepare something for public speaking. And he was, in fact, a specialist in public speaking, in presentation. So, that's always the same thing, that you meet someone, you collaborate very well, you got on well, and after it grows. So for me, it's really always the power of community. So continuous learning, for me, it's really to keep up with different things. And certification, that's a great question because also that's a cultural answer from my point of view. I wanted to have certification. I like certifications. I have also language certification. So that's what my first motivation, to have a certification, to learn, to meet new people, and also to confront what I know, the reality of my work, with what is known in the industry, what the standards are saying, to compare or to learn new things, or to say, okay, I do like this. Perhaps there are other ways to do it. And the last part of my answer, because perhaps some of your listeners or people who watched are going to watch the video are going to ask, yes, but what is a return on investment? Because once I remember I wrote a blog and the first comment I had was this: what is a return on investment? And unfortunately, Anthony, I have to be honest, I cannot answer because I do not think of monetizing. I'm sorry, it's a new word I learned in English, monetize. Things I do not do it. I'm sorry. So I cannot answer that. So in my journey as project leader, I think my certifications give me credibility and questions. Sure. People ask me why, what are you doing? How did you prepare? Then it was not required specifically by my company or in my current role. In some parts of the company, it is required, but not in my current role. But for me, it gives credibility and confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. In our industry, a lot of stuff is related to credibility. If you write a book on project management or project leadership, someone's going to say, well, what qualifies you to write the book? And, have a certification, et cetera, right? They're always looking for that background, that resume. Mayte, how about you? Talk about continuous learning on your end of things.
So I want to chime in the certification thing, because I was working as a project manager in Spain and nobody asked me for a certification. So when I moved to the United States, I realized that all job opportunities require, if I want to keep my career growth as a project manager, I needed the PMP certification. So it was at that point that I pursued the certification. And when I get the certification, I think that as a project leader or whatever role in leadership an engineer wants to follow, here in the United States, it's very important to have certifications, while in other countries, maybe it's more based on experience and knowledge that you have.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it can be definitely variable depending on where you're working. All right, so what I'm going to do now here as we kind of move towards getting wrapped up, I'm going to ask each of you to give us maybe one final piece of advice that you would give to engineering technical professionals looking to transition into leadership roles or improve their leadership skills. Yasmina, what's one piece of advice from you?
Well, okay, so I have two to say, sorry. Anthony, first, learn continuously and get involved in communities. That is some things we also wrote in our book, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership. I think communities can really help you in your journey, and communities can be through at work and also through institutes like your institute. Anthony, I think it's a way to be part of a great communities.
That's excellent. Mayte, how about you?
I think that I will recommend to embrace both learning and enjoying during the learning process. Reaching a leadership position is not checking the box about certifications, how many people did you manage. It's a continuous journey of personal growth and career and professional growth. So as Yasmina mentioned, volunteer helped me personally to learn and to take on new challenge. So I really want to recommend that have fun and enjoy the journey, because it's not easy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, that's true in that when we develop in our careers, we're also developing as a person, right? So if you go volunteer and you become a better communicator, it's going to help you at work and it's going to help you at home, because you can communicate better with your family. You can communicate better with your team at work, right? So it's really more than just, it's not totally separate, because it's you,
yes.
Essentially. It's you at work, it's you at home. So that's great. Well, before we wrap up here, let me just again mention the book that Mayte and Yasmina have written, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership, A Pathway to Improving Leadership Skills, Broadening Networks, and Exploring New Fields, published by CRC Press. And it's a wonderful approach to project leadership. We recommend all the time to engineers that you should get out there and volunteer, because that allows you to practice, use those skills, build relationships, find mentors. There's so many benefits to it. And I'm happy that both of you have recognized it and are putting some real thought into it and trying to promote it amongst our industry. So Yasmina, Mayte, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the AEC Leadership Podcast. You can connect with both of them on LinkedIn. We'll share the links to their profiles. We'll also share a link to their book so you can check out the book, which, again, it's a great approach to building leadership skills, is getting out there, meeting people, and building them. So thanks to both of you for joining us today.
Thank you, Anthony, for having us.
Thank you very, very much.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Yasmina and Mayte. They are brilliant. The fact that they are exposing this kind of secret, it really is secretive because no one does it. This idea that volunteering can help you develop your leadership skills is such an interesting idea, and it's such a valuable idea. I wish more people knew about it, and I hope that through this episode they will. If you enjoyed the interview, please subscribe to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help technical professionals become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.